Welcome back to On Texas Football for Wednesday's State of the Program. I'm CJ Vogel, joined today by Gerry Hamilton. A lot to talk about with spring football, only 13 days away. We're going to be looking a little bit at position battles on both sides of the ball and what kind of newcomers we might be expecting to hear a lot about this spring. It should be a pretty fun show. Before we get into that, Gerry, do you mind telling us about our good friend Adam Lowy?
Yeah, Adam Lowy, thank you very much for being the sponsor of the State of the Program every Wednesday. Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm specializes in results for all his clients, whether it's a tragic car wreck, an accident in the workplace, or any sort of serious catastrophic injury. Adam is who you want to call. Call Adam today at 512-280-0800 or reach him online at loweylawfirm.com for a free consultation. And remember, Adam focuses on results. Again, call Adam today, 512-280-0800, or reach him online at loweylawfirm.com. In fact, thank you very much to Adam Lowy for being the sponsor of State of the Program.
Yeah, thank you, Gerry, and thank you, Adam, for sponsoring the show. Gerry, off the bat, let's go ahead and get our thumbnail out of the way. The big clicking point. Is there going to be a quarterback competition this spring?
No, there's not. No, there's not going to be a quarterback competition. We got quarterback one, quarterback two, Trey Owens learning this spring. We'll get start to get some valuable reps. But no quarterback competition. But I will say this, very important for Steve Sarkisian, who I think Arch is already ready to play, to continue to get him ready to play in the event Quinn Ewers again misses time with injury this year. 2 seasons in a row. And the QB2 has had to start multiple games at Texas.
Yeah.
If that continues to be the case, then Arch Manning is going to have to be 100% ready to play. But I'll say this. I said all of that to say this. He's already ready to play. I'm not even worried about if he has to come in and play or start games. I do think Steve Sarkisian will work him into games a little more this year to ensure he's ready to go for his starting role next year. And I'll also say this, one of the reasons this is the most anticipated spring practice in a while, Texas not only has a QB1 that's going to be drafted, they have a QB2 that's going to be drafted one day. And this will be the most Texas fans have got to see of Arch Manning since he's been at Texas. So that alone is going to make it a very exciting group of Texas fans this spring.
Yeah, without a doubt. Getting to see Arch on the field a little bit more is going to be very exciting. But, man, I don't know what we're going to talk about now that we don't have a quarterback battle.
Right.
But anyways, to the point, we will have some battles, and there will be some on the offensive line. Who will be protecting Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning this year? Texas does return 4 out of 5 of their starters from a year ago. Christian Jones obviously departing for the NFL. Cam Williams right now is expected to take that right tackle spot, but there will be competition. Hayden Connor has been rumored to be the guy to walk over to the right side and challenge Cam Williams for that spot, but that also opens up what would be the left guard spot. So, Gerry, if you're looking at this offensive line as we walk into spring football right now, is Cam Williams your favorite right tackle? And if so, what happens at left guard?
100%. Cam Williams, the starter at right tackle. It's his job to lose because he's the starting right tackle. I do think Hayden Connor will see some reps at right tackle. I think, look, Brandon Baker's been awfully impressive pre-football since he's arrived in Austin. If that carries over to football, could he end up being the second-team right tackle right out of the gate? I don't think it's out of the question. I'll say that.
No.
I think Jaden Chapman has worked at all those positions since he's been at Texas, literally taking snaps at all 5 positions. I think guards where he long-term sits, competes maybe with Connor Stroh at right guard. We'll see how that transpires if that's where Jaden Chapman ends up. But that opens up left guard, right? I mean, Hayden Connor's returning starter. He'll train some at right tackle. But then you have Neto. Is it his year to make a run? His last month of practice at Texas in the 23 season was by far the best he's practiced and looked on a day-to-day basis at Texas. Then you have Cole Hudson. Is he going to finally be healthy for an entire spring, compete at left guard, compete at center for that backup center position? And a crazy thing, and I think Trevor Goosby's your backup left tackle headed in the spring. 1 more year of season to get him ready, unless Brandon Baker just looks so tremendous in the spring that he goes from, okay, we initially had him pegged at right tackle, Now he's going to go compete at left tackle with Gooseby. That would be actually a major development because
It would
Brandon
be.
Baker signed as a right tackle. That's what he played at Mater Dei. But if he ends up flipping to the left side, then that says a lot about his future. And that it's crazy to think about, CJ. Jake Majors is the starting center. That no question about it. The center is the same guy snapping to the quarterback. Both of them have their jobs locked in, right? But this is the deepest the center position's been at Texas in my years in the business. I mean, Cole Hudson, Connor Robertson, and Daniel Cruz, who's turned heads as a freshman. It's not very often at all. Texas has had 4 guys that they would feel very good about playing center. I'm not sure it happened before.
That's a great point because since Sarkisian and Flood have arrived here, that's been the question mark. You've been seeing cross-training at the center spot. Obviously, Jake Majors has been here for that entire duration, but there's always been kind of a hesitancy. Should he go down, who's going to fill in? Right now, you have to feel a little bit good about that. Jerry, one other point I wanted to make. If you're looking at your left and right tackles, not only for 2023, but beyond, let's talk about this for a minute because you're going to have a first-round left tackle with Kelvin Banks. You're going to have a 6'7", 350, 355 starter at right tackle potentially. You go back to your backup at left tackle, it's going to be 6'8", 310 with Trevor Gooseby.
Yeah.
Just to have another 5-star right tackle to back up Cameron Williams. So there's a lot of fun potential and a very high ceiling at the tackles position right now for the Texas program, not only again in 2023, but beyond. And that's huge going into the SEC because you talk about the edge rushers and the caliber of talent that you'll see coming off the edge. Having those positions locked down is huge for the Texas program, and it's very encouraging to see what that will turn into from this spring. So I'm very encouraged by that.
Yeah, I think it's a big spring for your backup offensive lineman. Trevor Gooseby had a learning year last year. He went from a guy that when he committed was 6'6" and 3/4 and 270 to now 6'8", 315. This is a big spring for him in that developmental process, especially when you have a very talented guy like Brandon Baker making noise. You may have to hold off somebody like that who's cross-trains at both right and left tackle, as he will. Cam Williams cross-trained at Texas. He had 1 day a week during the season where he worked out at left tackle, then was at right tackle. I think you'll see something similar with Brandon Baker. So it's a huge spring. Also, Connor Stroh, your backup right guard. A lot of positive things said about him. Will he ever be a starter at Texas? We're not saying that. Is he going to be a really good player at Texas? That's the expectation. Is he going to compete with Jaden Shatman at that right guard spot long term? That's what'll be interesting to see. Is Daniel Cruz so good he gets some run at guard before he has a chance to take over at center? There's a lot that's going on. And the reason I brought that up for Daniel Cruz, I think he's a center all the way, but look, if a guy forces his way into action, he just forces his way onto the field. Sometimes it happens. So my point is, if you hear anything like that with Daniel Cruz, you have a elite player.
Yeah. It's almost night and day, the offensive line spot from where it was when Sarkisian took over the job to what it is today. Texas fans everywhere should have a sigh of relief that this is how deep the Pancake Factory is right now. But going into the spring, you also want to hear who will be going against this offensive line. Yes. And that's going to be one of the larger questions that we see this spring, whether it be Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Tioe Alia, Savea. Who else stands up in that group right now on the interior defensive line? Ray Bledsoe, is he physically fit, ready to go? Aaron Bledsoe and Sadir Mitchell. I think those are the 6 that you're going to hear a lot of, plus Alex January. But who emerges from that group? Is it fair to say right now that it's going to be Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton running the show early on in that starting 11? Where does that go?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think those 2 guys together on the field anchors against the run like you ideally need or want, especially going up against the play of physical Michigan team week 2, right? Savea, I think he's an anchor, solid player, better than Trill Carter. Although I'll say this, Trill Carter hurt his knee early on, so I don't think Texas fans ever saw the real Trill Carter when he was at Texas. But I think Savea is still a better player, a little bit bigger guy. A lot bigger guy as far as a height, weight. So I think Savea is going to be solid, right? A solid guy that Texas can depend on. To me, the 2 biggest names this spring for Texas are outside of, guys that need to make the move are Sadir Mitchell and Dre Bledsoe. Dre Bledsoe was 287 pounds in December. Okay, that's a really good weight for him. He was set back in his development because he didn't play his senior year of high school. He got a bad UIL ruling, total BS ruling. And then he had the hernia surgery midway through spring of his freshman year when he enrolled early. So that set him back, right? But this is the year that Gerry should become a player for Texas. He came out with Jamon Tapp as raw as any players Texas has signed since Sark's been at Texas, but that also gave them such a high ceiling. And Gerry Bledsoe, pound for pound, may be the best athlete in the program. And people say, what? No, it's true. He may be the best athlete pound for pound in the program. So it's time for him to take that next step. But Sadir Mitchell kind of holds the cards for me. Texas needs somebody to play over the ball. He's the SEC size large human that Georgia tried to fight for until signing day. So those guys need to step up. Aaron Bryant has gained 20 pounds. He's a good anchor against the run. He has his spot. He has not to say a spot, but he has his role on this Texas team. He can anchor against the run, against bigger bodies. He's added the weight. He's added the strength. So if he's called upon to play 10, 15 snaps next year, he'll be able to do that and hold up against the run. So it'll be so interesting. But Sadir Mitchell, Gerry Bledsoe, and then Alex January will play. That body reshaping is going very well. He's prepared. He has good hand placement. His dad, Mike January, played at Texas, has taught him well. The D-line coach in DFW he works with has taught him well. He got to Texas with above average hand placement, technique, and understanding of leverage. Really took off his senior year after he gave up baseball. So he's going to play this year. And he's going to have to play this year. If he comes on and you start hearing about him potentially being a starter, again, that means Texas has really hit on a player.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting just to see how the cards fall here because, like you said, Sadir holds the cards because he does have that, you mentioned SEC size. I would argue he might be larger than SEC size, but that'll be interesting. Again, he's about 350, 355 at the moment. It looks good. Looks like he's slimmed down, added some good weight, replaced some of the poor weight that he came in with. But for Alfred Collins, the biggest question to me is, are you going to be a 3-down player more so on the front half of the 3 downs? Because we saw with T'Vondre Sweat, the biggest question was, can he be on the field for 3rd downs when it's more times than not a passing situation? For Alfred Collins, we know what he can do in the passing situations in the passing game with that length and that athleticism. Can you prove to be the anchor that you've mentioned in clogged run lanes, not get too out of place, out of position due to your athleticism, trying to get into the backfield too early? That's kind of where he's gotten in trouble a little bit in his Texas career. So for Alfred, piecing things together this year is going to be big. But one thing that's going to be working in his advantage is Kenny Baker, who is a pass rushing specialist on the defensive line. Getting to work and mold that athleticism with that size, I think, is going to be very helpful in his development for one final go-around at Texas.
So here's my take on Alfred Collins. And I said this morning on Coffee and Football, the spring football is the ultimate hype machine. Everybody looks great. Everything's great, right? It's almost like signing day, but for 20 straight practices. And that's going to be really easy if you cover Texas this year. Coming off the college football playoff, 9 guys drafted, bunch of NFL guys. Everybody looks great. Hey, this guy looks great. He's looking better than ever, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all before, Texas fans. You know what's coming. From anybody that covers Texas, you know the hype machine that's coming. But here's the reality on Alfred Collins. I want to see it. I don't even care about what people say this spring about him at all. This is a Saturday deal with Alfred Collins for me. Don't care about the spring. I've heard it all before. Saturdays, consistent snap to snap. If he does that as a senior, he will elevate himself to a 3rd or 4th round draft pick when he goes to the combine with a chance to move up more because he's got that freaky wingspan, hand size, and all that, all the goods, right? It's a Saturday deal. I don't care about what people are going to say, report on him this spring, because all I guarantee is that for all the people that cover in Texas, copy and paste everything that you hype up every spring and put it out again.
Well, now what am I supposed to write about, Jerry? I mean, God. But anyways, that's the defensive line. Texas only has about 2 guys, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, maybe a little bit of Aaron Bryant, who did play against Washington. So I'd say 3. Figuring out the rest of that 6-man rotation is going to be key.
That's going to be the key. Yeah, that is the thing I'm looking for. Like Sadir Mitchell, this is a huge spring. You know, is Texas going to come out of the spring feeling good about being 2 or 3 deep over the ball? I mean, that's going to be a key for me. Because what happens this spring, I think, is going to determine whether Texas will go after 1 or 2 D linemen in the portal. If Texas only really goes after 1 D lineman in the portal, that's actually a pretty good sign of what Sark, PK, and Kenny Baker are thinking coming out of the spring. Because right now, the number's probably 2 in the portal. If it backs up to 1, pretty good sign for the Texas defensive line this spring.
I'm with you 100%, but there's also questions and a little bit of a competition right now, right behind that defensive line at linebacker. And I think we can all etch into stone Anthony Hill right there, that will linebacker spot. And Maurice Blackwell has certainly played well when on the field at the same spot, but who's going to be on the field at Mike? And I think that's the biggest question. Is it going to be David Benda, the incumbent that we saw last year start the season? Kendrick Blackshear added to the fit. We're going to see a fully healthy Darian Gillette in spring for the first time, as well as a second-year Leonga Lafau. There's a lot of pieces here, and it's up to Texas to find that one guy that complements Anthony Hill and Maurice Blackwell in that linebacking core. But again, we saw Texas give the nod to David Benda to start last year. I have to imagine that's going to be the case again to start spring ball and head into fall camp through the summer.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the interesting one, the name to me is Leonga Lafau. So I think Kendrick Blackshear, what he played, CJ, you put the stats out, about 100 snaps in the box for Alabama last year. Yep. He has his place, but he's a downhill guy. You know, when you go up to Michigan, play against the physical offensive line, you play against Georgia. Kendrick's played in that box, in that arena before against the Georgia, right? Those are going to be kind of the important games in the role for Kendrick Blackshear. David Benda, to me, how much has he improved in his recognition and coverage is going to be so key for him. Because I think Leonga Lafau, it's a huge spring for Lafau. If physically he's continued to develop, which I hear he has,
he's there.
He's really good in coverage, right? So that brings that versatility. So if he has the physicality in the box playing downhill and he can make the calls, but then you know he's going to be good in coverage, that gives a different dimension to the defense. What made Jalen Ford so valuable was how well he played in coverage to me. So that's something I'm looking for. Maurice Blackwell, huge spring on the outside, right? CJ, this should be his time where physically he's ready to roll and be more than a role player and become more of a key contributor. His body was going to take time to develop. So this should be the year for him. Then, like you said, the young guys, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Darian Gillette, so much upside. He'll play linebacker this spring. Does he end up being an edge because he grows out of it potentially? Then you have Tassili Akana, who's already kind of the hybrid. So you got a lot of young linebacker. Samaje Burrell. This is an opportunity for these guys this spring to find a role and say they've arrived in the program after a developmental year. We'll see. 1 or 2 of those guys is going to break through, and Texas needs 1 or 2 to break through.
That's absolutely the truth. On the leadership side of things, I've heard tremendous things about Maurice Blackwell leading that defense when on the field in workouts this winter conditioning, as well as Anthony Hill. So David Benda's had that experience as well. That linebacking core is really stepping up with the departure of Jalen Ford as well. So I think that's very important, especially when you talk about what's coming to college football with helmet communication. Who on that Texas roster?
That's big, CJ.
Who's going to be that guy? Do you want it to be Anthony Hill? Do you want him playing loose and free? That's kind of where I lean. I think you want someone that's going to be on the field next to Anthony Hill, but going to be in the middle of your defense. Does it span out to be a Jahdae Barron? Maybe not. You don't want your secondary guys manning the calls, running across the field in coverage as well. So it's going to be big. It's going to be a big spring for Leonga Lafau, David Benda, Kendrick Blackshear, Maurice Blackwell. It's going to be a big, big spring. So we'll see how that pans out. But again, Jerry, before we get to the wide receivers, do you mind telling us one more time about our good friend Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm?
No, Adam Lowy, the sponsor of the state of the program every week. Thank you very much. Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm specializes in results for all his clients, whether it's a tragic car wreck, an accident in the workplace, or any sort of serious catastrophic injury. Adam is absolutely who you want to call. Call Adam today at 512-280-0800 or reach him online at loweylawfirm.com for a free consultation. And remember, Adam focuses on results. He's results driven. Give Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm a call today, 512-280-0800.
Thank you, Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm, for sponsoring the state of the program this week on Texas football. But now it's to the fireworks part of the Texas roster, and it's the offense. It's the rebuilt wide receivers from what we saw a year ago with Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy, and A.D. Mitchell departing. I'll put it bluntly, Jerry. Who's going to be your starting 3 wide receivers to begin day 1 of spring football on March 19th?
Well, the interesting thing is, sometimes when the guy comes in out of the portal, you actually start him at second team, right? And then move him in the first team, right? So who are my starting 3 receivers? I'm not sure these guys are going to walk out number 1 in the first drill. But it's Isaiah Bond, it's Matthew Golden, it's Jonte Cook. I think that is where you're starting spring football. I think DeAndre Moore, obviously, a big spring for him with Silas Bolden not being on campus as he continues to work on being a graduate transfer to Oregon State. So Ryan Niblett, a big spring for him. But those are the 3. I go with Bond, I go with Golden, and I go with Jonte Cook to start spring ball. Maybe it's DeAndre Moore. Maybe DeAndre Moore gets that first crack at the slot receiver position. But I think, to use Steel Rod's term, I think Sark's going to expand his circle of trust, and that's going to begin this spring a little bit. And so I'm not sure that who starts at the slot is as important this spring.
Well, I was going to segue in because Texas has a lot of newcomers, new faces, 4 guys from the high school ranks that are on campus right now, plus 2 transfer additions as well. How quickly will they get up to speed? I've been told that there's been 3 throwing sessions a week with the quarterbacks so far this offseason since the beginning of the winter conditioning program. So, hey, they're throwing. They're trying to get acclimated to one another, whether it be in the bubble, DKR, or the Denius Fields. They're out there getting work, trying to get up to speed with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, and now Trey Owens. But again, it's going to be interesting because you do have a 5-star wide receiver in Ryan Wingo. Yes. You do have a very talented wide receiver in Aaron Butler and Parker Livingstone. We'll see how Freddie DeBose's knee holds up and how quickly he is able to get up to speed. But what does that mean for guys like Ryan Niblett and DeAndre Moore, who are, kind of expecting, I would think, to crack that rotation now that you see the guys ahead of you depart for the NFL? They're probably thinking, this was my time to step up and make that shine. What's the key for these guys to get on the field when it comes to a Jonte Cook, a Matthew Golden, and Isaiah Bond now? How can they kind of sketch out their own role here?
Consistency in playmaking, consistency in route running, consistency in playmaking. Look, where Jonte, the on the field after the play starts, was not the issue for Jonte last year. The patience comes for a young receiver and transfer receivers. The scheme, it takes time. All the pre-snap movement. Sark wants to train guys at multiple spots, right? So there's a lot that goes into playing receiver in Sark's system prior to the snap. And so whoever handles that has a huge head start this spring. And Jonte Cook being year 2 should. DeAndre Moore should. Ryan Niblett should have a good understanding, because the reality is Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, as talented as they are, pre-snap, they're going to be asked to do more than they ever have been in their college career, and that still takes a little time. So pre-snap, whoever wins pre-snap, Sark can trust pre-snap. You go back to the Iowa State game last year. When Jonte Cook, brought him in, didn't get lined up, right? That was the last time you saw him on the field, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Sark is not going to put somebody on the field that he does not trust pre-snap, because if you can't trust the guy pre-snap, play's over. So that's going to be key. That's how they can get on the field. DeAndre Moore, look, smoothest route runner of anybody at Texas, got really good hands. He's a guy quarterbacks can trust. He has that going for him. For sure. Well, how far have these guys come in their physicality? Because here's the reality too, is who's going to step up in a blocking role, because there's multiple ways to earn a coach's trust and get yourself on the field. Who's the best blocking receiver of these guys who are headed into year 2 at Texas? Who's willing to be that guy? So who's willing to put it on the line there? I think all those things are big. Ryan Wingo, I think, so fascinating for all the reasons we just talked about. How quickly does he pick up the system pre-snap? Because I think once the play starts, that dude's really good. But how long is it going to take him to play with freedom to where he's not thinking? He's just out there playing. I'll say this. If you hear early on, it's been a smooth transition, not the workouts. That's been a great transition, but the football part's been a smooth transition. Watch out.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of him if that's the case. Because again, having watched him in person for the first time in San Antonio, my eyes were amazed. I became a believer. It looked like I had seen the first time a 5-star wide receiver that I had faith in. So it was impressive. I was a big Ryan Wingo believer after that. So we'll see how he can crack the lineup, crack that rotation, because again, it's not an easy thing to do under Sarkisian.
No.
And it takes time to build that trust and earn the trust of not only Sark but the Quinn Ewers as well.
That's what I was going to. You went right into that. Quinn doesn't want guys out there that he's always having to point where to go and what to do. That's not, as a third-year starting quarterback, what you want.
That's
you
exactly
want to have
it.
confidence that all your guys know where to line up. They understand everything pre-snap. Because if they don't have that part, he's not going to trust them to be in the right spot to throw it with timing.
Exactly.
That is huge for a quarterback, to have all those pieces work smoothly around him. If he starts questioning, man, I don't know if I can trust this guy, that's bad for the offense. He needs to be able to trust everybody.
Yep. And a guy that he can trust, we haven't yet talked about, but I'll briefly talk about it, is Gunnar Helm at the tight end spot. He's
100%.
been around forever. And Amari Niblack coming in, that'll be a fun little back and forth between the two, see how they complement each other and in that system. But Gunnar Helm right now, being the incumbent and being around Quinn Ewers, Sarkisian, and the system for as long as he has, have to imagine he's that first tight end in that starting lineup to start spring ball.
No doubt about it. And again, Niblack will be asked to do more, right, than he has. So he's going to have that little bit of a transition as well. But what he brings, though, is such a downfield vertical threat and the speed to press the defense. That Texas is working hard to get him up to speed on everything else, because you have to have a guy that talent on the field. But Gunnar Helm and Niblack, as crazy as this sounds, I think Texas could have even better combination at tight end in 24 than they did in 23, because Gunnar Helm's a year older and Niblack brings special speed to the tight end position.
Well, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. And Jerry, I'm sorry, but to hear about the Texas spring reports is going to be a blast for me. Reporting back to everybody else.
It's a blast for everybody.
No, it's a good time, and to not be able to talk about a quarterback competition, I might not have enough words to talk about everything else. So, but it will be fun. We were 13 days away from the start of spring football. Texas, again, a lot of talent. Jerry, I'll let you say the line, because you've been saying it all offseason. This spring is going to be what?
Most anticipated spring and practices and spring game in 20 years for a multitude of reasons. Coming off the last Big 12 championship, beating Alabama on the road, going to the college football playoff. Now you move to the SEC. You're ranked top 5 preseason. You're about to have 10 guys drafted. Quinn's going to be one of the top 3 guys in the Heisman race next year. Oh, and it's the most you've seen of Arch Manning at Texas, other than walking down Bevo Boulevard 6 times last year, 7 times, whatever it was. So this is the most anticipated spring headed into the SEC, and it should be. CJ, before we get out of here, we got to hit on defensive backs, though.
Yeah.
Because, look, again, Andrew Makuba comes in, very talented, 3-year Power 5 starting safety at a program with high expectations. That's the type of transfer Texas needed at safety. A guy that could also play some nickel if you have injuries or you want to move that cornerback or that defensive backboard around. Jahdae Barron's worked some at corner. Jelani McDonald's working at safety. There's going to be, Xavier Filsaime, been great things said about him. Jordan Johnson-Rebelt instinctively, workouts-wise, good things said about him. So this defensive back room is going to be much deeper in terms of SEC level athleticism next year. That is the key thing. If you watch the combine, there's a difference. The corner's very fast coming out of the SEC right now. So I think safety is actually going to be the most improved position on the Texas team next year. I think the depth at corner, CJ, is really going to be the question this spring. Behind Muhammad, behind Terrence Brooks, what is Gavin Holmes returning? What is this going to shake out and look like?
Yeah, Yeah, because we've heard Jalen Gilbo's getting looks outside, Austin
Yes.
Jordan as well. But what about Warren Roberson? You know, this was a guy who was very springy coming out of Red Oak, unbelievable athlete in his lower body. Can he get up to speed and kind of earn the trust, as we've talked about with Terry Joseph in that Texas secondary? Because again, there's going to be opportunities. Texas rotates a lot in that back half of their defense, and we've seen it time and time again. You know, it doesn't take a lot to get on the field, but to stay on the field, that's the biggest issue. And going against this wide receiving group in spring football, the opportunities are going to be there a bountiful amount, because it's going to be a fun back and forth and one-on-ones and 7-on-7 and team situations. A lot of opportunities here for DBs to make a name, as well as the wide receivers. So again, just another thing to look forward to this spring. But hey, we'll have all the updates coming to you in the next 2 weeks leading up to spring ball. And then when spring ball arrives, the practice reports will be coming out daily. So it'll be fun time for Texas football. It'll be a highly anticipated time, as Jerry has said, since spring ball, or since winter workouts have begun. So it'll be a lot of fun. Join us on Texas Football to get into the conversation, join the community, and get up to speed with all the visitors coming to check out spring ball workouts as well. But for Gerry Hamilton, go ahead.
Last thing before we get out of here, how exciting will it be as a Texas fan to be able to tune into the SEC network and hear them talking about Texas this spring?
Yep.
Just something for the fan base.
That'll be a lot of fun. We'll be hearing Paul talk about Quinn Ewers just a little bit. So good times coming for Texas Longhorns. And again, we'll have you covered on Texas football. But for Gerry Hamilton, I'm CJ Vogel. This has been the State of the Program. Welcome.